Okay, so it's gonna be hard for us to see, but hopefully, hello everybody, and welcome to this episode of Topical Illusions, Tangential Discussions. I have my friend here, Tiny Afrodite, code name, also known as Jo Anne in some timelines.
In some timelines, yes.
So we're going to talk today. We're doing part 2. So last week we talked about, we're doing part 2 of our discussion about books that have been transformed into movies.
Yes.
And whether or not, we liked them, didn't like them, because things are different. We talked about the medium as the message last time too as well, right? Where different mediums of storytelling have within them, because of their medium, a specific message.
Yes.
And so books, like when you're transforming that into a movie, typically you'll see that in the credits, like written for screen.
Yes.
Right? So the writer who's the writer of the book sometimes is involved in that.
Yes.
And sometimes is not.
Yes, and sometimes they've sold the rights and then, So.
Yeah, and like same thing with like comic book movies. Mm-hmm. Where like I look at comic books and if you look at them, they literally look like storyboards.
Yes.
Right? And so you literally, like if you looked at Sin City, they literally took that comic book and like took frame for frame what the movie would.
And then Star Wars also did that as well, right? There were certain in terms of like the subtitles or the way they would move from one sort of panel to the other, and you sort of sweep it across.
Yeah, and then also like knowing like what to shoot, what not to shoot. Mm-hmm. What were we watching the other day? Actually, I can say this from experience. So I used to do musical theater in high school, and we did Les Miserables one year. And for Les Mis, there's like a scene where you're like on a boat or you're on something and there's like cannons coming at you.
Yes.
But it's like a way of framing it so that you don't have to actually show the battle.
Yes, yes.
Right? It's like from the perspective of being somewhere where like you're like looking through like binoculars and you're like, I see over there that something is happening. So
yes, and I think that would be like Madame Butterfly or some Gilbert and Sullivan pieces where you realize you're on a show or things are happening.
You're like, budgetary concerns.
You're reacting to the thing without having to see it. And it then implies.
And I do feel like that's where like with some movies or let's say like adaptations, if they don't have the proper CGI or the special effects, like maybe that's why certain, like Watchmen was deemed like unfilmable. Okay. Because of like certain topics it was trying, and like Dr. Manhattan is too as well, and I thought that they did a decent job. But Dune was considered considered unfilmable for the longest time. Until so do you have a favorite? Did you see the new Dune?
No, I haven't seen the new Dune, so I saw.
Do you like the Lynch version?
I did and I didn't.
You like Sting though.
I like
Sting too.
Yeah, we all like Sting, but he was kind of flabby in that one. So it was like
thought he was flabby.
Yeah, I thought he was totally flabby. And then he was also like that was his time, right? So then he also had the little weird little. I don't remember him sort of wearing anything like that when I read the book. So I thought some of it was a little salacious in terms of just getting, we're gonna get Sting.
Well, Sting and he's like got a little, little outfit on.
Whatever it
was.
Like,
hey, look at me.
And his little spiky
fade Ratha.
Yes, and he's got that spiky hair, and I think he still made that menacing comment to I forgot Paul's partner.
Oh, Chani?
Chani, yes, he made some kind of comment about Chani, but it was like, it was all of those things. But he was also on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine for that when it was,
So wait, let's see. Like, when did Dune come out?
Oh,
let me see. Oh, I've got to bring my laptop.
I want to say early to mid 80s. I did the thing again. I want to say maybe 85.
It's hard for me to like.
I don't have my phone. You're gonna have to grab your phone too, so you can do the.
I usually have my laptop here as like for background shots.
Yes.
Because Dune came out, so Jodorowsky wanted to do Dune as well, right?
Okay, that I did not know.
Have you seen any of Jodorowsky's stuff?
No.
It's all like kind of like really art house kind of.
And I could sort of see, but I don't think it would suit it either. I think it needed somebody who would be serious about it. I think the Lynch version sort of captured the import of it.
I think he was limited by, like, to show the navigators folding space-time.
Yes.
I don't know, like, I think it was one of those things that you probably shouldn't have tried to show that on screen.
Yes.
Or, like, even what the navigators looked like. You could have kind of, kept them behind, like, a mist, not seeing the weird, thing that they were.
I think Cronenberg had, and that wasn't his type of work, but Cronenberg, I think, has the ability to sort of imply those
implication of what that is,
or what it looks like, but with us using more of our imagination. I don't think I was impressed with the way the worms look, the mouth.
Okay, yeah.
I think the heft of the worms was amazing, but I don't know why I didn't. That kind of plant like with the teeth. I don't know why I wasn't like. I don't think that was what I envisioned either. And then the other thing is that by the time I think I got to the fourth book, I was like, I can't give my life to Frank Herbert anymore. and I even now I just like I think about it. Oh, you could be. No, I don't want to reread. I'm out. I'm 100% out.
So, which Dune books have you read?
Oh, it was, Dune, Children of Dune.
Children of Dune.
Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, God Emperor of Dune, and then the last one. But
which books would you say were your favorite?
I think it was like the first one.
The first one, yeah.
But I also,
me too.
but I. There's that age thing. I remember waiting for the books, and so that was also a little different as well. Because everybody else now is coming to it as like an artifact.
I think so. Like, you have not seen the new Dunes, Villeneuve. I can't.
No, and then what's his name in Chalamet?
Yes, Timothy Chalamet as Paul Atreides. Yes. What did you think of Paul in Lynch's version?
I also like Kyle MacLachlan, so I thought, and I thought he was earnest
Lynch
enough.
loves Kyle MacLachlan.
Yes,
he puts him in everything.
Yes,
and I saw Kyle MacLachlan first in Sex and the City, so I will always have that imprint of him.
So then
he was Charlotte's like man. And he was so annoying. I was like, oh my god.
So I was never a Sex and the City girl. So then I never watched it. So I had no idea that he was on it. I remember him being on Desperate Housewives though.
Okay.
And he was great.
He's like that classic. He's got that look of like what do you want to call it? Like classic romance novel, like hero.
But also subversive at the same time. So in Desperate Housewives, he comes off as
who was he in Desperate Housewives?
Oh, he was the companion of Bree.
Okay.
Yes,
I only watched it on and off.
Yes,
I don't know
and I can't remember how they got together. But then he, for any of you who remember watching it, and I won't say anything, but he.
Desperate Housewives had Terry Hatcher on it, and I love Terry Hatcher.
Yes,
she was a great Lois and Lois and Clark.
She was great on Desperate Housewives as well. But he sort of. Allowed her to enjoy life more. That's all I'm going to say. But I enjoyed him.
Is he a cuck character?
He comes out very, very straight-laced, but he's also a little bit badass. But he was also loyal. But then there's always twists and turns and whatever.
Yeah.
But the reason why Bree appreciated him was because that he really enhanced her life, and I'll tell you after.
Yeah. Okay.
But
okay. Nuts.
Yes, because I don't
TMI for this.
Yes, but I did enjoy him as Paul, but he has an earnestness as well, right? And sometimes he's able to convey that kind of wonder.
Yeah.
And even if you follow him on Instagram, sometimes he does weird little things. I think once he liked a comment of mine, and I was like, oh my god.
I love that.
Yeah, I was very excited.
So we are today on today's topic. We're talking about like adaptations into movies, and so. A big one that's recent is the Dune universe that's been taken to film, and you haven't seen the new ones.
I haven't seen the new ones.
I have seen the new ones. My sister is with you on like liking the old one, and she doesn't really want she loves science fiction, has read the first few books, so it's just like, oh, you kind of want to see how it's always nice to see like after reading it and you're like, oh, you saw that too. Like, I want to see it like in real life.
Yes.
I get to see like, oh wow, like how like the Bene Gesserit in real life, or like what these planets must have looked like, and like what that would like actually.
Yes, and then Patrick Stewart was also in it. So there's all of these there's sort of like these foreshadowings of greatness of some of these actors as well. Makes it very, very exciting.
And I will say Leto in that first movie, I love him.
Okay.
I don't know why. I just like for like Little Ray, I loved him so much, and I still do. Like so, like Jessica and Leto, and like that whole concept.
And they also had that kind of really deep thing.
And they're like classical Hollywood actor looking.
Yes.
Like that look of like that glam, like from the 50s. Like it had that look.
It was almost like a surreal DeMille spectacle film, right? Like the way you would see Ten Commandments or something where it had that.
I love the Ten Commandments, though. The Ten Commandments. I do. There's nobody.
Even if you were an atheist and you came across, it's like The Sound of Music. Doesn't matter. As soon as you come across that. You might change the channel, but you're going to go back to it and you're going to just watch it to the end. Yes.
So like Dune comes with it that, I think that same epicness behind it, right? It is an opera, and it does, in a movie, like it's good. I feel like the new Dune is like split up into a trilogy.
Yes.
I think. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I think it's a trilogy. But in the new movie, they cut it off before, or like after the war, and Jessica and Paul are exiled, and they're with the Fremen. They cut it off there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they haven't, like, Paul hasn't like come back, and like Alia isn't born. And all that kind of stuff has happened. But I actually have a comic book called Muad'Dib, which is about it takes place in the Dune universe, but it's the comic book version of when Jessica takes the water of life and she's pregnant.
Yes.
And like what that actually like looks like, and then they're like, oh my gosh, you were pregnant, you weren't supposed to do that. Kind of thing. And so there's a new show right now. It's called Dune Prophecy, and have you read Children of Dune, which is Brian Herbert. Which is
no. So
this
is what.
So this is the contention, right? Of,
because he went back and he wrote everything.
He wrote extra stuff, and like I feel like I was watching a YouTube analysis. If you guys have seen Dune Prophecy, please do let me know what you think of it. I thought it was okay, but I read Children of Dune.
So, but Brian's not Frank.
Brian is not Frank Herbert, right? And so that's the thing. Like, it's just like he's expanding on the universe that his father gave him, but he lacks the imagination to be more abstract about things. So he's not, almost needs to like make, there was an omni-mind, there was this, and like I don't know if you needed to define.
So he's not as deft as Tolkien's son.
Oh.
Because I think Tolkien's son had also was sort of entrusted with his dad's works. I think was very much more careful about how he was going to present it to the world, and if the things that he was going to add to it. Whereas I think I was annoyed that.
Did you read any of Brian Herbert's books, like
No, because I think I was annoyed that he was going to do this over again.
Yeah.
I also felt, and it might not have been the case, but it felt like it was a cash grab.
Oh, yeah.
Like, because your father has already written these books. Why would you?
You need to go back and revisit certain things,
Or you would just create another book, but why would you rewrite the stories? Because that's what it felt. Because that's what I was informed that he was rewriting the stories as well, retelling them, and it's like. So this answers my comic book question. Remember here we were talking about the panels and you guys can't quite do it. So that's how it felt like for me.
Yes.
You can't rewrite that.
I feel like also Dune probably has a special place in your heart because you and Dune came into form around the same time.
Yes, I think that
in
would
the
be
60s. Yes. Yeah, like you came into like being at the same time the story of Dune came into being.
That would be. I didn't think about that, but
I always think about that because it's no different than a lot of the movies in the 80s that were made when I was made. I feel a very strong connection with some of those works, just because like I was watching a YouTube video before this, and I was telling my viewers about this, about how like Alan Moore and Grant Morrison. Are you familiar with each of those
Alan Moore, yes, but not Grant Morrison.
Grant Morrison has done DC stuff as well, and he does like multiversity, they're both very I'll call them both very esoteric comic book writers, but it's known that they don't like each other. And the way that like it's like talked about is that Alan Moore apparently has said that like Grant Morrison took his ideas, and then Grant Morrison was basically saying that like Alan Moore, but I'm like, there's no taking of any ideas. It's like it's why there's inventions all at the same time, because like for me in Dragon Warriors, for example, and like writing my own comic book, I don't necessarily think that I don't own the hero's journey.
Yes.
You know, like I don't own like these certain things, but like it's about how you have like, but you have created characters that embody a certain lens of it. And there are, so go on,
I was going to say, I have a feeling that they both see themselves in each other, which is why they sort of repel. It's like Prince and Michael Jackson apparently had that kind of thing. And I think it's because they can see the genius. And it's almost they can
like a magnet, almost like you're the same charge.
Exactly. Like, and so then it becomes this annoyance because you're creating, or the zeitgeist is sort of affecting both of you at the same time, and there's nothing you can do about it. But because you have created it, and then you're watching somebody else create it, I think there'll always be that kind of, they're mirroring, but then they're pushing back on each other.
I've read Grant Morrison and I've read Alan Moore, and I'm like, I feel like there would be a lot to gain by those two coming together and collaborating on something.
Yes.
But
they're not going to.
No, they never would, because in the way that like people have defined it, it's like, it's like two warring wizards, like.
Okay, I can sort of see how that could be.
Wizards with like different worldviews on like how Superman is or how these heroes are, and like but to me, I feel like their viewpoint is actually quite similar. even though it doesn't seem that way. Grant has said that like he sees everyone as almost like cells in this big cosmic body, and like almost like I agree with him. Like all of us have to figure out who exactly we are, so that we can do exactly who we, whatever that is, and in doing that, that's you unlock your super gift. Yes, and then you find the others, and then like.
And what does Moore say? Or Moore hasn't said anything?
Moore hasn't said anything about like that. He, the way Moore puts it is almost like he says that like Grant almost like took his viewpoint. It stole his ideas kind of thing.
Okay, but it's interesting when you said viewpoint because that's something very, very specific in terms of your lens. It's almost
Grant Morrison has said that he's done some psychedelic journeys and he's like seen so I like some of his experiences. I can actually relate to some of that.
So he's been plugged into the conduit in a very, very different way. And if Moore hasn't done that, then...
But they both consider themselves... Moore I know uses mushrooms too.
Okay.
Yeah, and Moore has also released a book recently called The Bumper Book of Magic.
Oh.
Considered nonfiction, but also has graphic novel panels in it.
Interesting.
Yeah, so like it's just... the reason why I bring this up is because also there's a lot of movies that have been done on Alan Moore's works that he has not liked.
Okay.
like Watchmen, I don't think he liked that. I don't know how he felt about V for Vendetta. V for Vendetta was very good though. I know the movie V for Vendetta is...
which I've never seen.
Remember, the 5th of November.
See, I know that line, but
it's from a poem, but like Alan Moore repurposes it. And like Padme's in it. Natalie Portman.
Oh, yes, that I knew, but I've never...
but like it's very telling for like the times now of like, you know, like this government that creates this... I'm not going to get into the whole, but it's very Alan Moore in terms of like a viewpoint of society and civilization and like what it would mean to actually be like a vigilante or someone who's actually like trying to fight for good, but you're not on like,
So even though I've never seen it, but whenever I've seen ads or pictures of it, for whatever reason, it has always made me think of Brazil.
It is, yeah. It's the same dystopic kind of viewpoint though, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And let me see, what else Alan Moore did? Swamp Thing.
Which is
he didn't make Swamp Thing, did he? Was that character created by him?
I didn't think so.
I think he just writes like he loves Swamp Thing. Like even the Superman comic book I have of Alan Moore, like he has to have a crossover with Swamp Thing because he loves Swamp Thing a lot. But he also I look at Swamp Thing as being the Green Man idea. So this concept of like the man who is like Earth's champion. My friend Arthi talks about how like Krishna, the Blue Man, Captain Planet, all of that symbology is like within like being an Earth warrior. So I think that Alan Moore like connects to that on a very deep level, and I think that's why like he likes Swamp Thing a lot. But
interesting.
Yeah. So that's Alan Moore's. What other movies? Let's see here that were like science fiction, fantasy that we wanted, or either.
And and we were talking, and then one popped into my head, and then it ran away.
I know Lord of the Rings. I was watching also, what else?
Those were fantasy.
House of the Dragon. Yes, which was based on a book. And we all know Game of Thrones went kind of downhill because they went off books. They went off book.
Well, but they had to after a point because he wasn't...
I know, he wasn't freaking finishing it.
Yes.
So the good news about House of the Dragon is that those books have already...
They've already been done, yes, and so they're complete pieces.
It makes me sad though because this is the war that causes the extinction of dragons. So it explains that. So it makes me sad watching it because it shows about like Targaryen politics and how the house basically tears itself apart because of like who is the rightful heir, because the king names Rhaenyra, his daughter, the rightful heir because he doesn't want his brother to get it because his son died in childbirth. But then he ends up having a son, but with this like evil lady. Anyways, so the sons are like kind of messed up. So like they usurp the throne, and then like they don't. So it's
which is like the same. It's still it's all the game.
It's all the same Game of Thrones politics stuff, right?
Yes.
But there's dragons, right? There's the whole concept of like every Targaryen as a baby has a dragon egg grown with them, and like the way they like. I love all that, like the appreciation of that, and like training with the dragon, what it means to be a dragon rider, and then also the fact that like what it would mean to have a dragon war.
Okay.
Which is like nuclear war.
Yes.
Think about power. Yeah.
See, now I would love to, and I haven't read her books in years, but it would be really cool to sort of have like a university class about dragons, and then talk about the different types of dragons. So his dragons, but then you have what was it? The Dragon Riders of Pern. So there's all these different...
Dragonlance, for example, like my
or
first...
even Aragon.
Oh, yeah.
Right, that would be interesting to see all the different... Even C.S. Lewis has a dragon for a small period, but it's an interesting way that we get a dragon.
Yeah, and I think it's just important to note that Eastern and Western dragons have very different symbology, right? So these Great Lakes that we have over here in Toronto, like if this was Japan, each of those lakes would have a Shinto temple on it, venerating the dragon there, right? Because every freshwater body is considered a dragon.
Okay.
Rivers, lakes, anything that's freshwater, waters of life are considered dragons.
Okay, I don't know if you ever, and I haven't heard about it in years and years and years, but there used to be a time where they would always say that something was living in Lake Ontario.
And there's apparently like a Loch Ness kind of.
Yes, there's a living in Ontario.
Yeah.
Yes. So I always thought that was kind of interesting as well. And then the fact that we're sort of like this little gathering place as well, and then we have this, and then how would she have gotten here, or what trapped them, right? So say we were Pangea and we have these creatures, but then the world fractures, and what causes them to sort of separate into these different sections.
I feel like because my husband's Maltese, Malta, I'm so like I always ask like my father-in-law like all these questions about the.
But they've got the caves.
There. They have deep caves. Yes. They also have that like it was like a school tour. That like went to the caves, like just never came out, and they don't know where they are to this very day. Yeah, I'm like maybe there's a portal in there. Probably.
That's possible.
More
That's
than
always
likely
possible.
there's a portal in there. But if we think about, like, there's a lot of limestone in there as well. So, like, if you think about the certain crystal mechanics of that.
Yes.
But back in the day, like Pangea Day, like, we want to think of it as, like, everything was just higher.
Yes.
Right? So in Malta, like, being that little island, they were much more connected to, like, Italy and all the other, like, larger, like, land masses of the ancient world. So I would think that, you know, whatever lakes that we have here that are freshwaters that are like from the glaciers or how things have moved, like it would be interesting to know how like that all like connects underground.
Well, so that's also interesting because there's a children's book. I think it was called, and I think there was a movie too. I think it was Stig of the Dump. And it's British, but it was also, I guess there was a mound, and it looks like it was prehistoric or caveman-ish. Yeah. And then the story, I think the little boy who lives there finds the caveman who's still living there, and they become friends. And I can't remember if there was a portal included in the story where Stig could go back. I want to say it's Stig, but I have to go back and look it up. But it's kind of interesting that you have another little pocket.
I love how children's stories do that.
Yeah, but they know somehow. Yes, and the people who write for children, I don't know what it is, and because you know they, I guess they're just magical themselves. It's almost like they're magical teachers, right? Because even when you look at British, not Enid Blyton, E. Nesbit, and she wrote The Five Children and It, and she wrote The Phoenix on the Carpet, and there's always these little cute little like a group of 4 or 5 children who come across magic.
Yes.
And then there's also people, I think they've reprinted his books, but there's an American writer, Edward Eger, and he also had magic as well, where these kids would find magical things, but in his case, I guess it would almost be the same. He probably read E. Nesbit. The magic always goes a little wrong.
Oh my gosh, it's what you saying that. I'm gonna read a little piece of like Alan Moore's like magic book because it's like it speaks exactly about what you're saying about like it's almost like people who write children's books know on a level that the kids are going to get another level of meaning on.
Yes,
which we as when we become adults.
Yes,
I like to look at it as this, like, you know, we just get a lot of static.
Yes.
In between our connection to the upper realms.
I also found with the kids' books with magic, like, or at least these 2 examples, they get the magic, and then they realize the magic is off. So they wish for the things that they want. Like, I want like ice cream all the time, or I want this thing, but then they see how.
Can I use your fingers? Yes. Because I can't actually.
Okay. You don't have.
Can you close this? So like, use the.
Okay. See, I have a touchable screen.
That's great.
Yes, that was one of the.
And then can you double click that? Oh no! Wait,
see,
sorry.
That's me because I made sure that I got one of those.
Perfect.
Okay.
So let's see.
Well, that's a pretty page.
Yes, this is. Can you make this bigger? Oh, here.
Sorry. Yeah. So I touch my. What do I do now? Double
click? Just make it. Just click it.
Or
just you can just press it like.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. I need to make this bigger. So.
What am I doing? See, I just do this.
I wish that this would actually.
So I'm moving this, and what do I move it to?
And then see that little like.
Okay. So
magnifying.
Yeah. Okay.
That's good. Yeah. Okay. So basically, I'm just gonna read a little. So it's basically from Alan Moore's Book of Magic. So he says, we fall in love with the romance of it as children, and then when we are a little older and have found the real world to be less enchanted than our storybook suggested, we become bitterly disappointed, scornfully rejecting the idea as unsuitable for serious grown-up debate, perhaps afraid that by believing in it, we're only risking being once more taken in and then let down again. What is it then, this thing that most of the great artists, scientists, and thinkers who shaped our society considered so important, and yet which is seen as only fit for fools and babies? What is magic? To a child, the answer would be simple. Magic is the realm of wondrous powers and strangely worded spells of spirits, demons, sorcerers, and witches. Clearly, none of these things have a place in the adult view of reality, although this does not mean we can dismiss the child's experience as unreal. Before discussing magic, then, it seems we must ask ourselves, what is reality? Dun, dun, dun! There's more to it than that.
Yes.
But it's true, like, it gets into this whole concept of Jean Grey, who I'm, like, cosplaying as right now. If you don't know X-Men, if I just walk around the cities, like, for example, I was, I forget who I was dressed up as, and I went to go pick up something at the store, and they looked at me and they're like, are you Spider-Man? I'm like, this is not Spider-Man. I know that, like, you don't know maybe what this character is, but it's not Spider-Man.
Like, there's enough to know that Spider-Man...
There's enough to know what Spider-Man
looks like. And it's either that, okay, he's all red. If you were dressed in red, it's either you're Spider-Man or you're Superman. Right? Yes. And then if you were a different color, but you look like you have webbing, then I'd be like, are you Spider-Man? Because there's this weird thing about the pad, yes. But then the color throws you off.
Yes.
But yeah.
But I was dressed in, like, not that. I can't remember what exactly outfit I was wearing, but I was, like, offended. I'm like, but then I was like, you don't know.
Yes.
How would you know, right?
Yes.
Versus, like, when I go live and you guys know me as Jean Grey,
yes.
everyone immediately goes, oh my gosh, Jean Grey.
Yes.
So that's like what is that?
Yes. But I think because some people don't go into those other worlds. Their worlds are very, very narrow. So they know that there's this stuff on the periphery and whatever, but they don't. It's like knowing about music today. Right, so you may hear about it, you may know that there's this thing, but who really know? Like, there's a group of people who just know there's a Cardi B person and maybe she's vulgar, but they don't necessarily know anything else.
Yes.
Right, and I think that so if you hear some woman singing and maybe it sounds a little bit, is that Cardi B? Right, because they just know that they've heard a whisper of things on the sort of periphery, and I think that's that same kind of thing where they kind of know, but they've never gotten themselves lost in it.
Yes. So would you say that there was a movie that you grew up with you, like, loved and, like, affected? Like, because I think of movies and TV shows and books, they're all ways that we furnish our inner world and our inner dream world, right? And so as a child, you seek and you look at these things as ways of, like, oh, I'm going to have that. Like, my perfect place is like a tree house out in, like, so, like, movies like, let me think. So, for example, the first movie I ever saw in theaters was The Little Mermaid, the animated one. And this is why I love, like, musicals and all that kind of stuff. But the concept of, like, longing for another world, or, like, even though, like, you're in one place and you want to, like, be somewhere else and just, like, break new ground, or, like, no one knows you, like, that was what seeded maybe that. And Little Mermaid is, like, based on, like, a fairy tale, right?
And it's a really sad
and the real fairy tale is really sad. It's
all
actually
miserable. All the fairy tales are miserable and sad. Like,
yes, like, it's awful what the prince does to her.
Yes, and yes, and I remember there's a cartoon version that I remember seeing, and then,
like, based on the real fairy tale.
Yes, and then but then at the end she lets him be with the other girl, and then her little spirit comes to pray over them, and I'm like, what the, like, even when you're
sad.
Yes, but
it's so sad for her. She's like a water nymph who basically falls in love with a human, and, like, basically he's like, oh well, I'll just, like, get some and then get married to the actual, like, actual person.
But I think that's always the same sort of thing with mythology, and I think that but I think those fairy tales came from a time where life was miserable, and that stuff used to happen, right? There would be the girl who would be foolish enough to fall for the person who's given her everything. Have you ever seen? It's Disney, Into the Woods.
I've seen parts of it. I haven't seen the whole thing.
So
Is James Franco in that again?
No, he's not. But
Okay, I don't know why.
Is it Chris Pine? There's a battle of the Prince Charmings, and then and which is hilarious.
I
where they're
love
singing
Shrek's
it.
version of Prince Charming. By
Yes,
the way,
but he's just sort of like he's just like he's just vacuous. But in the film, so he captures is it Cinderella? He captures somebody's heart, and then he something happens, and she realizes she realizes that he's nothing, or he's not as wonderful as she thought he was.
Oh, the Prince Charming.
Yes, and he says, "I'm charming, not sincere." And then, but it's.
Ooh, I like that.
Yes, and so there's all of those things.
Charming, but not
I'm not. I never say I'm charming, but I never said it was sincere. But it was a telling moment.
Speaking of charming, and that is all like part of Gemini's wheelhouse, right? Being charming,
Yes.
and so also just to be aware that like the act of charming doesn't necessarily mean that like once the act is done, that's going to stay as a behavior.
Yes, and I think when people use that word Riz now, I feel that Riz because it's charisma, right? But I feel Riz captures that fleetingness of the charisma, or that charismatic nature. There's like the thing where you're compelling, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything more. The other great fairy tale thing was Once Upon a Time.
Yeah,
that was, and I really, really enjoyed that. But that reminded me a series of children's books called The Sisters Grimm, and they were two girls, and they were being raised.
When was that released? Like, is it like a children's book, or is it?
Yes, and I want to say maybe it started in the early 2000s. It's seven. Okay. It's one of those things where it's still 7 books, like Narnia and all of the other stuff. Yeah. But it was written by an American, and we find out that these 2 little girls were in the States. They're always going from like foster home to foster home, and then one woman comes in and takes them, and she says she's grandmother, and then they discover that they are the descendants of Brothers Grimm.
Oh,
and then they find out that there's a fairy tale world, and then they find out that there's all of these other things that are going on, and so things are happening in their real world, but they can go back and forth between the two, and the fairy tale world is very, very complex, and it was still, and you could make it for adults, and you could add so much more, but even for children, the level of maturity that's involved, and what we find out, and when we find out who is the actual bad guy, it was just so well written. But your heart is broken. But when you watch Once Upon a Time, if you've read the Sister Grimm, you're sort of like,
you kind of feel like that there's some
inspiration. Yes, it was inspiration. Somebody read that and sort of realized what they could do with all of
I do think that concept of a fairy tale world is a real place.
Yes.
And that you have one, one. And I do feel like for example, like reconnecting with some of my Dragon Warrior friends who I've known, like a few of them I've known since I was 5.
Yes.
Right? And so like I've had friends since I was 5, and like almost like it's good to have reminders of who I was.
Yes.
Because she was pretty cool, and I was so hard on her, and it's just like you get, and
or they tell you things that you didn't know about yourself. So I find out from everybody, I thought you were going to be writing for Rolling Stone by now because you always had a journal and you were always writing and you were really, really into music.
You're gonna get it. You will. You know what? I was voted most likely to cure cancer.
Okay.
That kind of stuff.
Yes.
And I was just like, whoa! I don't like. I didn't realize I just thought that about.
Yes. Or where were you? Why didn't you tell me that then? But it's everything is in hindsight, right?
Yeah,
so then.
Yeah. But that's like stories, right?
Yes.
So like when you're in the moment, and things feel really dark. It's because maybe the best part's just about to come.
Yes, or because being a teenager sometimes was sucky.
That too.
It was and for me it was like sucky. And but being in school was the thing that sort of saved me, even though I was terrible at school because I was passive aggressive. I had a very overprotective mother, and my success was supposed to give her.
You would be really.
I could have been.
I could have been.
I could have been, but I was always pushing against my mom, and she needed me to be something to give her stability and respectability and all of those things, and some of them weren't my choices. So she wanted.
Oh, I know.
So,
I feel with you on that.
Yeah, like a doctor and a lawyer, but it was like you don't see me. And so
well, I also an Asian mother who, like, if you aren't a doctor or a lawyer, you
it's the
fail
same.
at life.
Yes, but also there was also that pressure. I have to do that to make her happy and to make her content.
And you do want to make her happy. That's the thing too, right? That's the thing. Like when you're like a daughter, and like I know that like we have some Taurus stuff in common, and so like that comes with it. Like I just want to be worthy of love.
Yes.
Right. So you do all these things to like make sure that like your mom.
Yes, but then you're always playing this game where you're always trying. Like, so I would, I'd be self-sabotage because then I couldn't do this thing. Well, and then except for math, I was terrible at math, but it was unfortunate because math is the key to all those other things. You need to have a good math mark to be able to go on to get a specific type of degree, but then I couldn't.
Yeah.
And so or you don't hand in the assignments.
Yeah.
Or you do them at the last minute. Or
school for me, this is where I relate to Jean Grey heavily. I was the smartest kid in my class.
Okay.
I was. From, if you go to my grade school, St. Emile School, they're on the board, they have all like the people who win, like they probably don't do this anymore because I feel like the schooling system right now, like with ranking kids and stuff, they've changed all of like how that kind of was. But at the time, in grade 1, I remember I went to this little school called St. Emile School, and then they basically at the end of the year had awards.
Yes.
And the big award was like highest academic achievement. So it's whoever had the highest grade point average.
Yes, and
I won that award every year from grade 1 to grade 8.
That's cool. So that wasn't my public.
And so did my little sister.
That's cool. So I didn't experience that in the public school or the Catholic school elementary.
Yeah, but it stressed me out, Jo Anne.
Oh, of course it would.
Because you know what? It was like after I cursed the fact that I won.
Of course.
When I was in grade 1 and I won, and then I won again. And then I won again. Each time the pressure mounted and it got bigger, and then you couldn't lose.
Okay.
And then so I would be grounded if I had less than 90% on anything, Jo Anne.
Okay, whereas
anything. So if I had got 91, they would like look at me being like, "Whoa, what happened to the other 9%?"
Whereas I was, she would look at me like, "There's no possible way that a child of mine could not be smart."
Oh, that's a different kind of lens.
There was all of those things. So and then what happens is that your validity is changed, right? So people will tell me I'm smart, or they'll think I'm clever, or whatever, but I don't have a degree. And my validity, but it's because it's been entrenched. That's the bar.
Well, I'll tell you this: Kevin never finished high school.
And I'm fine with it for everybody else, but it's been such a thing because.
But I think that's what you're talking about right now on a greater collective level.
Yes.
We're going through that certification, degree.
Yes.
All of this stuff doesn't mean that you know something.
Yes.
That you're a master at it.
No.
That you have grasped it.
No. So
that is like I think a reckoning with all of us that like these metrics are not really. The fact that I won that award all the time that's one indicator, but that's not. There were other kids who were smart in my class.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And also, like, I wouldn't consider myself as intelligent in some things. I was just better at taking tests.
Yes, and those are the things. And then the other thing is that we wouldn't have necessarily recognized it because now I realize, and people have pointed out ADHD, neurodivergent, and it's like, oh yeah, I can't fit into those molds. I can't.
Yeah.
So what was expected of me and the way to be able to achieve, I couldn't do. But I had to get to this point in time where we're recognizing all of those things. I can't go back and tell all those people, well, you were wrong because.
But I think that there's so much there, right? I compare this to like dance, right? Because I didn't go to dance class specifically till much later.
Yes.
I started like older, but I always learned to dance on my own by following music videos.
Yeah, so it would be like the kids who do TikToks and they do all the
you
dances.
teach yourself, right? And so, but there's you can get a degree in dance. But does that mean you can dance?
Yes, no, it would be that the theory. Yeah. So then when I talked,
like a degree in personal training.
So then when I worked in an educational institution and I would talk to parents or whatever, or I talk to young people, and I still do it even with the charity, I'll be like, just so you know, the piece of paper just means that you can do the work. Because you can take your degree and you can apply for any other job. Because if you just come in with the BA and you've got your degree, it just shows you can work collaboratively, you can work independently, you can follow instruction, you can certainly follow your supervisor.
Yeah.
Right. You can do all of these things. You know how to be able to take a project hopefully from beginning to end. That's what they're looking at that piece of paper for. Whereas in the past, it might have meant something if you had gotten your degree in a very particular field of study, but now it's very, very nebulous. The piece of paper just sort of means, you can do.
And there's sketchiness with that piece of paper too.
Yeah, well, yes.
You have the whole places that don't really have a right to be even giving that piece of paper.
Yes, but then the places so that's accreditation.
Yeah,
right? So
then, or like if you come from different countries and things.
Yes.
Equivalencies of knowledge and stuff.
Yes, and that's harder because that's a transfer credits, right? So then what will happen is then one institution will ask for the syllabus and all of the things, and what they'll do is they'll look at all of that stuff and then decide whether it's worth a credit or not, and then they may or may not give it to you. And even then, most institutions will say we're only giving, even if you come with your other degree or whatever it is, we're only going to give you you can only get this many credits.
Only worth this,
but even then we will only at max give you 4 credits. So you're hoping, so it doesn't matter what all the stuff that you have, you're only going to get 4 credits out of all of the stuff that you have. So then they're going to try to match all of it and then take the best 4 to give you credits. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. Yeah. And the same thing with your transcripts.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's on special type paper. It looks a very, very specific way, and so I worked in that area. And so you'd get insurance companies, or you'd get other places who would be contacting you saying, "We have this, and it doesn't look quite right as whatever this other what we got." And then you'd have the whole thing, and then you could be ruined. Because you may have tampered with your transcript, or in most universities, you only get 1 degree.
Yep.
That's it, 1 piece of paper. It doesn't matter if you burn it; it burns in a fire. It's gone. It's gone because it's such an important piece of paper that they prevent. It's one of those. It's validating.
I didn't even stay for my ceremony.
You didn't stay for your degree, so you're still entitled because you didn't pick it up. You're still entitled.
Well, my dad picked it up.
Yes, but if you never got it, there's only 1. But if it disappears,
well, my dad gave it to me. I have it. It's actually up in my house. It's up above my altar. I have a BA honors in English and psychology.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I have nothing.
No, that doesn't mean anything though. My hubby Kevin doesn't have a high school, but he's literally one of the smartest guys I know.
Yeah, but he didn't use it as validation. I still use it as it's part of my psyche. It's been imprinted so I'm working away from it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
But it's still one of the. So it took a long time.
I just feel like I was so entrenched because my father was a professor in computer science, right?
Yes.
So when I went to the University of Manitoba, people knew me as the prof's child or the prof's kid kind of thing.
Yes.
And I was also we had colleges in U of M, so we had St. Paul's College.
Yeah, U of T, right? Yeah, University College, Woodsworth College.
Yeah, and so he would do all of his classes from there because it's a subsect.
Yeah.
And I was the University 1 Student Council representative of St. Paul's College.
Yes.
I ran that as a joke. I ran for Student Council as a joke, and then all my friends voted for me.
Okay, so because I was a loser, whatever kid at high school, and then the 1 year.
Did you run for Student Council?
No, but by class council.
Okay, yeah.
And I actually won. I was VP.
I would see you being great.
But it was really interesting because it was and I can't remember what the dynamics were. And I think maybe I was I don't want that particular person to be in that role. And it was just sort of luck that it was oh.
Hey Pikachu! Oh my gosh! Let me see if there's comments. I've
yes, and we totally tangented all of it.
Oh, thanks for the follow, Fried Racer.
What happened?
Shireen, hello, welcome. The Chases, as she walks dogs around the neighborhood.
Here, this neighborhood?
This neighborhood.
Oh,
yeah,
hello.
she's from the Vibe. Yeah.
Okay. If you ever see me in this area, you can come up and say hi, please.
Okay, good. So I think we have covered all that. So we're gonna actually let's bring it back to what time is it? We're 6:30. Okay, we're okay. I don't think
but we were still talking about other things that were impactful. Never ending story. Was
yes,
really
yes. So today's topic is movies. And that have been like basically reimagined or adapted from books.
Yes,
and how that kind of works.
And
we can talk about fairy tales; those count.
Yes, yeah, fairy tales, science fiction, fantasy.
Yeah.
So Never Ending Story was one that was very special.
Yes. Did you? Well. I never read the book of Never Ending Story.
I read the book.
Yes.
Well, and so I read the whole book.
So Never Ending Story. I love the first movie. I did not like the second.
You're not supposed. Well, I didn't.
You say you're not supposed to.
Yeah,
okay,
what's happening? Yeah. And yes, because when you read the second book, you're like, oh, you're not. Right, but I haven't seen the second only because my characters are not the same people. So I want the Atreyu. Right, that person.
When that horse scene.
Artax. Yes, and he's just like, oh my god. And then we have to remember, we see him at the end riding Artax.
I know, but it was.
Okay, so this for me, I've experienced loss and death, right?
Yeah.
So I always remember the Rock Eater.
Oh.
And then he talks about he's the only one left, and he's sitting there and he goes, and I've had that moment where it's like, I thought I had big strong hands. I thought I had big strong hands, and he goes, but I couldn't even hold on to my friends when the nothing came.
Oh,
and he says,
the nothing,
and he says, so I'm just going to sit here and wait and let the nothing take me too. And it's like when you think of anybody who's experienced any type of grief, where they lose that one person, maybe it's a child who's lost a parent, and I've got that situation, and my kids have that situation, or a parent who's lost a child, and I've had that situation, and you do others, and it's just like, or you lose your best friend, or even in my neighborhood, there was a young person who had died, and it was on the news, and then her friend came in, and she just happened to say, well, I'm going to this thing, and you're just like, oh, and you can just see the grief, and it's like that. Yeah, I thought I could hold on, and little kids do when you start to realize that there's an end. Little kids all do it with their parents, but you can't die. Don't die. Don't leave. Don't go. And then and then you say, well, I have to. I can't. And they say, I'm going to hold on to you, and you're just like, but you can't. And that's so that it was one of those moments where that grief and that sorrow was just so.
And you realize.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, I mean, like Lion King or Bambi, when Bambi's mother dies, it's like was a traumatic moment. But you're right. Like, it's like when kids come face to death.
Yes.
But I do feel like for me, all that loss is all about like I think that's what for Never Ending Story gets your adversary being the nothing, right? It's not like this thing or this evil person is I'm going to take over the world. It's just this nothingness, and so it's like this concept of like the void.
Yes, and also living in the moment and making the most of it, and that's another thing that we don't do now. So we don't talk about death. We don't have rituals or culture about death.
No, we don't.
Right. Whereas when you look at things like the Day of the Dead, and then other cultures that have these moments, we don't do that. So we are afraid of death. We don't talk about death. We don't teach about death. We don't say that. We don't tell our children, well, that one day life is going to end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so what happens is then we want to stay young. And we want to, the Botox and all those things. And there's one thing about wanting just to look good, but there's also that thing where we're doing it because we're hoping that we won't go.
Yeah.
And then there's something, and I get it. It's hard. I don't particularly want to think about when I'm taking my last breath because that's a different thing where But hopefully, when that moment comes, it's not going to be that scary thing that I think it is because I only had the experiences where I've lost my breath.
Yeah.
In other situations.
Yeah.
But it's that thing where, the never ending story lets us know, well, the nothing is only terrifying because we're so afraid of not being because we haven't done anything, right? And we see it with Sebastian. He really hadn't done anything. And
it's like that paralyzation, right? I had this feeling, I talked to Kevin about this, and I'm sure that there's many of you guys out there who feel this way, is like when you were like a kid, almost like knowing too much. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like there's some of us out there who like you grew up way too fast.
you were old. No, I think you were old souls.
That's
right?
part of it.
Yes,
yeah,
and so sometimes
yeah.
it's growing. There are situations where you've grown too fast, or you've been in situations where you haven't. But then there's also.
But that might be because of the fact that you came here to have those, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
There's
but then there's also ones where you just sort of have an understanding, or you see things differently.
Yeah.
Right. And you just sort of recognize. There's a different timbre of things, and then you're also, when you look back at all the people that you hung out with or that you interacted with, like I realized there's a lot of old people in my life when I was a kid, but it was also
you're like Kevin. So like were you like, did you hang out with like older people?
Yeah, and there was a lot of old people that I would talk to, and I would get stories.
But see, like you could hang though.
Yes, I could hang.
You know what I mean? So like that's the thing. There's something about that, like those, like Kevin was like one of those little kids who like loved anchovies and blue cheese and watched like Naked Lunch at 10 and like liked to hang out with like the older people and his older cousins and like like see what it was like to be an adult. Yes. I was not like that. Okay. I'm a big sister, right? So when I came into this world and like I had a little sister, I thrived on being that. Yes. I knew my sister was going to be born before she was going to be born. I knew, like I was like almost like waiting. Like, when is she going to, like, show up so we can, like, play together and stuff, you know? Like, when is this going to happen? So, me and my sisters, we are very tight. Very close. Like, I can tell when, like, she's going through anything. Like, I can, like, we're just very close. And she is the biggest supporter of any of my dreams. Okay, so that's any story I would write, anything, like, she would believe me. So that sounds like Charles Wallace and Meg in the Wrinkle in Time series, right? Yes. Where they're just so connected and they just have an understanding of each other. If there's just one other person who can believe in you, that's enough. Yes. Like that's enough to like, and then you like, and then it like, and believe in you in the right way. Yeah. Without conditions. Yes. Right. Yes. And that's a huge thing. And we have I think we have mothers that have conditions. Yes, right. And I think that's what like. But you had that saving grace. But then you had a sister who loved you unconditionally, and so that allowed you to thrive. But remember, it's a little sister, right? Okay, so there's still So the thing is, like when you're being a big sister too, and like that responsibility, like I was the one who like driving my van, like. Any of my sister or her friends, like if you need me to come pick you up, I will come pick you up wherever you are, or like any of these kinds of things where like if you need to talk to me about like your first kiss or your first encounter, because I worked at a teen health clinic too, right? So like I volunteered there, so I was like that person you could come to and like I'm not gonna judge you, whatever it is, or like you know, like when you first get your period, or like like how to use a tampon, like it's just like weird questions like that. Like who are you gonna talk to besides your like big sister who's just gonna be like, hey, I'll get this for you, I'll pick this up for you, I know this because I went through it. Okay, so I think they have. I think, and I'll use my acronym or my nicknames for them. So the punk and the punkette. Sorry, the punkette and the punk, because the punkette is older. We raise them to have that kind of relationship. Yeah, and so sometimes they are horrible people to each other, but they're also, when they're tight, they're really tight. And it's, as they're getting older now, they've bonded. They'll get closer. Get closer. Yeah. I'm on the outs now, and so that'll come around though. But it's also still interesting to watch now that because they sort of fight for each other and they protect each other. And there was once moment where the past I wouldn't say within the 5 years, where she had my daughter, where the punk had gotten angry at me. She was like, "You left me to take care of him by myself. I'm the parent." And I was like, "Oh my God!" But they won't recognize, because you're doing all the things. I'm damaged. I had a parent who was not the best. I am ADHD and neurodivergent, and so I don't necessarily have the tools or the skills, or I navigate differently, or I work under duress. Well, it's like what they say, but like you need a village to raise a child. Yes, and then like to just. Yes, and then there's also it's also the way you would navigate, and then there was also depression. Of course. And so you don't realize all of that until you're out, and then you're like, oh my God, I wasn't. But they're not going to see. They just see that they just have a person who was dysfunctioning, as opposed to saying, oh, but now we recognize why she was dysfunctional. Whereas like with my mom, she was dysfunctional. But when you're a teenager, my mom was crazy, and she was like all these things. But now I look at her story and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, Mom, that life was that bad for you, right? That these are all the things that happened, and so that you didn't have
any kind of joy, or you thought you might have joy, and then it was taken away.
Yeah.
So
and people like act out in crazy ways when they're hurt.
Yes.
And you're going through pain.
Yes.
And it's one of those things. It's a big thing to be able to kind of like look at it and be like, okay, like I can see why.
Yes.
I can like have empathy for that.
Yes.
And
yes.
But I feel like there's also the idea of a character arc as well, right?
Yes.
Like with my mother, who's like still alive, and I'm still dealing with a lot of certain relationship stuff, because like I have been blessed to have literally the best girlfriends when I was growing up. I had a like close crew of girls I was close with. My sister I was really close with. So I had really healthy, strong female friendships growing up.
Yeah.
Despite my mom and my relationship being like, I was always just stressed. I was like afraid of my mom.
Yes, the same.
I was just freaking scared
Terrifying.
of being hurt or punished for not being perfect. That was like my main relationship. I was like, please don't hurt me. Don't look at me. I don't like. I'm sorry. I'm not doing everything perfect for your liking. So just pretend I'm not even here.
Yeah, so I had moments where my mom was really, really loving. So Christmas time is a happy time for me because my mom gave me the best Christmases, but she was also terrifying. So I'm scared of her. But what has happened is that it's only now where I'm trying to stand up for myself. So I can be terrified of anybody.
Yeah.
And so work environments where I could be, and also because of the way my brain works, I knew that I was off. So then I knew that I was powerless because I can't function the way, or can't do the tasks the way people wanted me to. So then I'm always afraid.
But you know what? There's another way of looking at that, Joanne, because take it from someone who has been a boss. I have been a boss. I have managed many people. And I remember, I have a story. I'm actually, if Alex, you watch this later, hey Alex. But I managed this wonderful team of people at KPMG, and one of them on the team, she was told to me that she was a problem, like a troublemaker. Yes. And she was off at the time, so I hadn't met her yet. So I had the team, and then they're like, just be careful when she joins the team, like just to be aware of like these certain things. I'm like, I never take anybody's opinions like that, ever. I don't. I'll tell you this, when I first got with Kevin, his ex sent me a message on Facebook telling me that he had anger issues and to be concerned about like getting into a relationship with him. Yes.
Kevin?
Yes. So I looked at this, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to take advice from his ex-girlfriend.
I think, if anything, sometimes you just look at him and he's very serious, right? He plays music, he does all those things, but he's also, there's a stillness, a deep stillness with him. His waters go deep.
Kevin is, my babe has been through a lot.
Yes, like, I feel that, but I don't ever feel, and I think if he did get angry, it would be a sad thing, because the anger would also be from disappointment. But he doesn't seem like a lash outer or a mean speaker. No. Like, so I don't, like, so you're saying that she said that, and I'm like.
But I'm saying, like, this is someone telling me this, right? And so the same thing with like someone who's I'm going to manage, being like, oh, she's like this and like that, lazy, whatever thing. As a manager, so when you're saying like, I'm not doing the thing in the way that they want me to do it, maybe they're not communicating it properly.
But I think they're also cut from a different cloth.
But you know what I'm saying though? Like, cause like when it comes to, whenever I deal with something, like I've been a project manager for developers and stuff, right? So they're the ones actually like coding.
Yes.
But I need to convey to them technically what the client wants, and the client's not conveying to me it in a technical way. I have to kind of like do that synthesis and like let them know what it is. So like,
but it still goes down to the fact that you're cut from a different cloth.
Sure, but at the same time though, I want you, Joanne, to also think of like, reframe it and have it less be like, oh, I'm not doing what they need me to do, and more about the like you're just, it's not, the communication's not there.
Yes.
Like, it's just like with teaching dance, right? Like, just, like, I've had it where some dances I can't get, and then someone else teaches it to me in a different way, and I'm like, oh.
This is the movement.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, it's got to verify for us.
Okay. Oh. Cool.
It's just because, like, it just wants to make sure I'm not AI.
Oh. AI.
I was a boss. A sister or cousin, that was it. I was a boss. Oh, okay, I was a boss. Yeah, the good point.
You are a boss. You are a boss.
They used to nickname me. They used to call me Boss Lady, but I was very uncomfortable with it. Yeah, I was very uncomfortable being called a boss. But at the same time, I had to do things like that were really hard for me. Like, I had to fire someone once.
That's
I had to walk them out. He cried. It was so hard for me, and so but I had to learn like how to, because I'm a very emotional person.
Yes, you feel all the things. So even when other people, sometimes you feel everything come at you. So you feel the sorrow, the unhappiness, and it clings to you. Right?
Yeah. So it just was, all I'm saying with that is like, Joanne, just to be aware of like when people are trying to like give you a direction. And just like in acting, like if you're given a direction and then you do something and they're like, that's not what it was, that's no one's fault. Do you know, like, and it's not because like you're not working properly.
Okay.
Or you could just as easily
say
like you're not communicating properly.
Yes. Yeah. So I would say my brain works differently. So it's like going to school, right? And or what we were talking about, right? So there's a way that you took good tests. Yeah. But that was the measure. Yeah. And then you have the people who can't do good tests, and so they don't get
even though maybe they know the material.
Exactly.
They just maybe don't know how to like show their work in a way that like the system itself or whatever metrics are going into play can take it and give you a grade, right?
Yes, and so that's where I am right now, where I'm walking away from or learning how to not cling to that, but it was a part of me for a really, really long time.
I love that you bring that up in terms of like us closing up this conversation, because I think us at a collective level are trying to figure out how to do that.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, all of us are like on a personal level, and you know, as within, so without. But like, as you were saying, like that whole idea of like, okay, like my validation doesn't come from this piece of paper or these like people who are like experts or like my boss or like my manager. It comes from ?
Yes.
It comes from where? Because it has to come from somewhere. Like you can't just everything be willy-nilly. But I think we just have to all
yes, and I think when you go back to the books, but that's when we appreciate our hero stories or whatever it is, because they are also going through that process and those journeys and learning out who they are or where they fit or becoming comfortable within the skin that they're in, and then sort of realizing how the world is around them and whether or not they're going to accept the world and what it says, or if they're going to create a world for themselves.
Or do you have like the courage to change it?
Yes.
Yeah. Right?
Yes, and I think that's a lot of our hero story. Our heroine story.
Yeah. So off the top of your head, do you have like a movie, book person? Is there anyone that you can think of off the top of your head, like that would be like a source of inspiration for you? If not at the top of your head right now, that's cool.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of characters. So I have a lot of characters that I really appreciated that died, like Matthew in Anne of Green Gables. But in Narnia, I really liked Edmund, and Edmund was the one who would have been considered the sinner, right? He was the one who.
But he gets redemption.
He gets redemption, and then there's also a moment where in Prince Caspian they go back to Narnia.
Yes.
And they're trying to decide what they have to do, and Lucy says something. And Peter and Susan are against her, like they don't want to do it. And Edmund says, well, you know what? I remember that when it first happened that I was a prig and I didn't believe her, and I'm going to follow Lucy. I'm going to listen to Lucy now. And I remember Lucy's joy at like, thank you, Edmund. But it was really nice to be able to see how he had changed. And I also recognize that, that Turkish delight, like there are things that you eat where or when you experience something where you're just so willing, just want it again and again, and it's like, so he's the most human for me, and I really appreciate I appreciate
him.
Edmund has
to do, that's the whole second son thing.
Yes.
Right? And then having to deal with like that perfect older brother, yes. And like and comparing yourself to that.
Which is I think that's also why Peter and Susan didn't go back. Like they go back once, but they don't have multiple times. I think Edmund does it a few times, the 3 times, because he's Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, Voyage of the Dawn Treader.
Yes.
And then the Voyage of the Dawn Treader is his last time. And then in the Voyage of the Dawn, and he and Lucy don't come back, but then he makes their cousin Eustace, because it rhymes like useless.
Yes.
Eustace is on the Dawn Treader, and then he appears in the silver chair.
Yes.
And then in the silver chair he brings Jill, or Pole, and then they appear again in the last battle. Yes. But Edmund and Lucy have like, I think it's the last battle. I know. I still remember, I can still feel the feeling when I finally got it and I knew this was the end. And then after reading the book and then sort of going, oh, Yeah, I have to wait now, like, because I believe in Narnia. I recognize.
I believe in Narnia.
Yeah, and I recognize what Narnia represents in terms of his writing. But I believe in that place, whatever it was.
Yeah, Narnia is a real place.
And then even the way, you know, even the way the dwarves, the dwarves at the end, the dwarves and Shift the donkey and all of those things and that completion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know that feeling. It's me in March break reading that book and feeling that thing, and it's like, yeah.
Oh, I just got the tingles as you said that.
Yes, right.
Yeah. You remember exactly where you were when you read that.
And the person that read it the first time comes back. So Narnia is one of those books. A Wrinkle in Time is one of those books, which is why I won't necessarily watch the things. Same thing with Anne of Green Gables. I won't watch the things because the way it touched me and what I visualized is so important, and it was almost like I was there. And when I watch these creations, I'm not there anymore.
Yeah, I know. And you're also seeing like a specific director, a certain viewpoint of how you're looking at this world. And like, as I said, they all can play together. But like at the same time, like nothing will beat your internal cinema of how you're viewing that story.
Yeah, but some things I'm not in it. I read it and I enjoyed it. It was wonderful, but I'm not in it.
Yeah.
So I read all of Percy Jackson and I love them. I can read them over again, but I'm not in it. And so I could watch the movies, but I was walking with them. I did all of those things. I don't know how I'm there. So if I watch those, I'm not there.
Yeah.
And it changed, and I don't want that experience.
Oh.
And I think that was the first time. I think this is the first time I've been able to articulate what it is that prevents me from watching those things. But I'm not there. And in my head, I'm there. I'm walking with the Pevensies.
You have just touched on something that I talk about in terms of like why I read certain comic books and why you don't. Like, you can't say, no one can tell you what your favorite ice cream is.
Yes.
And that can change too, right?
Yes. Or it can't.
Or it can't. But you with your stories, like ones that you say like you're in it. There's a book called The Dragonlance Chronicles, and it's like a series of books that was written for D&D. So in D&D, when you're playing role-playing games, the biggest part of that whole game is the game master, and the whole role of the game master is to storytell.
Yes.
You're telling, this is what we're doing, this is the mission, this is the encounter, this is all this stuff. Thank you for the roses. I know you guys love RPG too. I'm working on my own RPG game that we can all play together. Yes. Yeah, and framework. So because these books are written with the game in mind. So in that book, I don't know why I had not played D&D, no tables, I didn't know anything about it. I just read that book.
Yes.
Those books, there's 3 of them. But I read the second book first, and in that book there's a death. There's a death of a knight named Sturm Brightblade. And when I come to that part into the book, the way it's written, it's almost not clear that he dies. And so I flip the page and then it's like, oh, but Sturm's dead. I'm like, what? And then I go back and I'm like, no, I thought he was just injured.
But it's that's like Harry Potter with Sirius Black.
Yeah.
When he sort of falls through and he's gone, but is he really dead?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I had hope for a little bit, and then I was like, oh no, he actually is. But then now, whenever I reread that story, whenever I come to that same point, I always still hope. Maybe this time.
It's going to be so.
Die.
Yes, yeah,
it'll be different.
Yes, and I can understand. Yeah. I can understand. I can feel.
And when
that.
you say about certain stories where you're in it, there's me some characters who die, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm sad, but this time, every time I'm just like, can this time you not?
Yes, or it's Walter. So in Anne of Green Gables, there are 2 major deaths that affected me. It's Matthew, and then Matthew was Marilla's brother, and then Anne loses a child.
Oh.
And she loses Walter. And it's just one of those things where she captures life, right? That's what happens. But I know it's the same thing. I'm coming up to that moment, and I just know that that there's going to be a moment where Matthew's going to clutch his chest and Anne's going to spring forward.
And then you're reading it like it's the first time again.
Right? And it's just it's coming, and then you're just in it. And it's the same thing. And it's the same thing with Walter. And there's there's one of the books where there's foreshadowing that Walter's going to go. And then he goes to war, and it's the First World War.
Yeah.
And he doesn't come back. And there's a moment where there's a girl who's sweet and lovely, Una, and we know she loves Walter. And we see there's another series of books called Rainbow Valley, and we realize that they're all playing, and that you just know that that's. And then something happens, and I think Anne's youngest daughter Rilla, who's named after Marilla, I think has letters, and I think she gives them to Una, and you just feel Una because she clutches them, and that's all she has.
Yeah.
I get choked up. You can just feel Una because that was her love. They and she knows that he had to go, and there's a whole bunch of stuff because back then there would have been the white feather. Like nobody has that kind of shame now. You don't go, and maybe some people might try to make you feel, but you don't have to go.
Yeah, but
back then you had to go, and if you didn't go, well, you were a coward, and somebody would send you a feather, and then you would have to. It was like the Scarlet Letter, and sometimes you would have to wear it, and even if you didn't, you knew that somebody sent it to you, and then you've been labeled a coward. And now we know the horrors of war, so they weren't wrong not to. Because in the past, soldiers would have gone, suffered PTSD because they did all these horrible things, but there was no place for them to speak. Now, people can speak and you can make that choice. And I'm sure if there's a really, really bad war, there'll be a draft. But we'll all get drafted, right? Male and female. But it's that moment where you're just like, oh, and then you just see Una, and she knew he had to go. He's not going to, but that's all that she has. And she's not going to, if she finds somebody, it's never going to be Walter.
You know what, though? Like, the tragedy of all that, like in Shakespeare, when I studied this in school, like, Shakespeare has tragedies and Shakespeare has comedies.
Yes.
And these are all ways by which we, like, alchemize those emotions.
Yes.
Like, so, like, the grief that you feel from when you've gone through losing somebody, which we both have.
Yes.
And when you go through that in the story and the characters as they're going through it, it's like you're all together.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And there's a strength in that. And then also knowing that because you've read that story, they remain eternal.
Yes. There's always that moment.
Yeah.
It's like Christopher Robin and Pooh Bear.
Yeah.
And Christopher Robin is gone, but at the same time, he's still always in the 100-acre wood
always,
with
forever.
with the bear that he loves.
Yeah.
Right, and it's like that magical parting. There's it's like two different timelines, and we were lucky to be able to share that timeline. And then there was the one that was actually here that we can go and we can see his plot. But there's another place where Christopher Robin is there with all of the things that he loves, and it's a wonderful, right?
I love that.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a perfect way to segue into next week because we were talking about movies that have been adapted from books.
Yes.
In this second part episode. So next week we're going to talk about song lyrics as story.
Yes.
Because songs, like just what you said too about like you remember exactly where you were when you read that book for the first time, like when you felt that. Like, and songs, same thing. You can remember like the first time you like heard that song, or like when you played a song like 8 times on repeat because you just
And it's interesting, and we'll just like a little small tidbit for it, but it's interesting because we listen to music now, but there's no stories. Right, and because people get upset of young people in music, and it's like they can have it, but I find that it's not even sometimes it's not even a scene, or it's like a small little snippet of something, or we get a character, but we don't get any depth. Whereas all of us know that it was a dark desert highway, and as soon as you hear that, I'm pretty sure
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Right? Yes, right. As soon as you hear one word and you've got the whole right, but the whole story, you've created a story in your head. Like we all know the warm smell of Toledo's were rising up in the air. Like there's certain things that you're just like,
or Hotel California,
which is you got it.
Yeah.
Right. So I told it, but you just picked up on it because it's just there. Or if you're listening to any of if you read or listen to Bob Dylan's lyrics, right? It's the same thing. There are stories, and it's like. Oh wow, and they move you, and they're also poems at the same time, and so then we all. Now we live in a time where we can have soundtracks and we have playlists, but that's what we were creating. I remember trying to write a story, and I took I didn't know that this could be a thing. I remember picking all the songs there were going to be songs that matched the scenes.
Yes. Yeah, because it matters. Like we talked about this in a previous episode, like the soundtrack of movies.
Yes.
And, like the composer. That's such a big part of how you're even telling a story.
Yes.
Let alone the song itself encapsulating a story in it, right? Kevin has this. he listens to everything. He's a DJ, so I would say he's like genreless. But there's this one song. It's like, pass the biscuits, please, and the whole song is just a guy complaining at the end of the table to pass over some biscuits. I'm like, but there's a story. He's like hungry in the corner, and he like wants some biscuits.
And I guess it's like a hole in the bucket. There's a hole in the bucket, dear Liza, and there is a hole in the bucket. But they've told us a whole story.
That song about the meatball.
Wait, which one? On top of spaghetti?
Yes, all covered with cheese. I lost my poor meatball when somebody sneezed.
Yes, and then it rolled off the table and onto the floor. Yes. But all of those. It's all of those.
Yes, but like I mean, like that's more like a nursery rhyme, I suppose.
I think it's more of a song, and I think it's more of a camp song. Whereas like a nursery rhyme would be like "Ring Around the Rosie." For me, that's more of a nursery rhyme. Was on top of spaghetti.
Nursery rhymes, I think we could do a separate episode.
Yes,
because there's some stuff.
There's some dark stuff.
And also just even like like the way that the tunes are in it. I think there's some.
Whereas on top of spaghetti is more like Raffi.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right? And Raffi is a singing storyteller for children, but he's telling stories. Or Fred Penner.
I loved Fred Penner.
My mother couldn't stand him, but I liked Fred Penner. And I think he had some song where he was...
The cat came back the very next day.
See, but it's the same thing. It's a story, and we're learning about it. And there's an NFB cartoon. Is there not about the cat comes back?
I think you're right.
Yes, there is.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. You brought up Fred. I used to love Fred Penner. Yes. I don't know why, but I did.
I think they were really good. It's like loving Mr. Dress Up. They were just really simple ways of
I'm
communicating.
now the new Mrs. Dress Up. I've realized.
Yes, so you have to have your little trunk. And then you do your drawings, right? Remember, so you need to have.
Yeah. Oh my gosh! It's true.
Right, you have your drawings, and then now you need an alligator owl, and you need there's the owl, wise old owl. And Wolfie Finnegan.
Oh my gosh! Okay, so it's good to let me just check the comments, and then we can sign off.
And thank you because we did tangent a lot. They were very meaningful tangents, but we did tangent.
Read a few. Let's see. He's all right. I'm a Superman guy. Read a few X-Men. Wolf and other X-Men love watching. I really want to know who she is.
What love watching? What?
I don't know who. Let's see here.
WTP.
WTP.
What is WTP?
Could you please clarify? WTP would be. Let me just think.
WT.
World.
No. What?
Would it be?
I don't know.
I'll come back to you later.
Winnie the Pooh! Oh my God!
I didn't know that. I didn't catch that acronym, but now I do. I love Winnie the Pooh.
I don't think I've ever shortened Winnie the Pooh. I've always said Winnie the Pooh.
I'm also from Winnipeg, so we actually have a little Winnie the Pooh like statue.
That's right, because it's Winnipeg, the bear.
Yeah.
Oh, Pooh.
I love Pooh. Yeah. I had a girlfriend who loved Winnie the Pooh too, and she loved Tigger as well.
I loved.
Who's your favorite? I love Piglet. I don't know why.
Eeyore, because Eeyore just needs
Eeyore, I love Eeyore. He's so sad all the time.
And Roo. I love Roo. Poor Kanga's. Kanga's sweet and small. Everybody wants a Kanga, and she's always putting that little sweater on him. But Roo is getting into all the trouble and is hanging out with Tigger and doing all the nonsense. Yeah. But he's just so boisterous and bouncy and I love
you. You kind of give me like some Roo vibes.
Yes, I love Roo a lot. Do you know that they can't find the actual Roo? So the New York Public Library, and I can't remember which branch, has all of the toys, but I believe Kanga or is it Roo has gone missing.
Like someone took it?
They don't know. They
just can't find it. Okay.
So it's theirs. Who knows where it is? Somebody may have it and they don't know, or it might be hidden in something. But that they're.
So I'll put that out there. Help us find Roo.
Yes.
And then next, and make sure you give Tiny Afrodite a follow on all the channels. And then I think your Substack is up.
Yeah, I wrote something on, and the Substack is called. You can probably find it under Tiny Afrodite because it's always there.
If you're the author, is that?
Then Tiny Afrodite is yes.
And then let's see, and then you can join us next week, same bat time,
same bat channel,
and we're going to talk about songs and song lyrics, and then we'll probably have some holiday sprinklings in there as well. I think so. Because lyrics and holiday lyrics too.
Yes,
what makes a holiday song a holiday song?
Yes, and then which ones are your favorites, and which one? And do you like only oldies or do you like newbies? So I have a few newbie ones